Are there a few things in the studio that would just be hard to live without mic-wise? Like if you didn't have them, you'd be like, oh man, that's not around. I don't get to use it.
Well, I never let any of that stand in my way.
Sure.
But you want to be more specific?
Are there any particular vocal mics that you're always glad to have around? Like, okay, we get to try
easy.
singing on
I
this.
mean, my favorite vocal mics a lot of times are like RE20s and SM7s.
Sure.
I love them because they're super not fussy, and you can just immediately get a usable sound, and that's super important when you just want to lay a vocal down quickly. And also, singers love singing into those microphones because they're not scared of them. Like, oh, this isn't some $6,000 microphone that I can barely breathe on. This is a thing I can get right on, and like, you know, I mean, it's astounding to me how often I would do the scratch vocals on a record with an SM7, and then, okay, we're gonna do some real vocals, and I'll set up a gorgeous microphone, $10,000 microphone, and the singer and I will both prefer the $200 SM7 because there's something that they feel fearless about, and the quality of the sonics never equate to the freedom in the singing. It's you always just want an inspired performance.
Totally.
Always.
All right, so in a place where the performance is less influenced by the microphone, say drum overheads, kick drum, is there a place that you like to start with and you keep coming back to?
Well, I always try to use as few mics as possible if I can. And if I can, I love to find one microphone that sounds almost exactly the way it should sound, which is tough, especially if it's a loud drummer.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you got a drummer with a lot of style and a lot of technique, then you can usually really be quite minimal, and it sounds better than lots of multi-tracks. So a lot of times I try to get one microphone that sounds really good and then supplement it. You can't always do that, of course, but it's not uncommon. Let's keep it that way. It's not uncommon for me to use a microphone right outside, you know, like a resonant the bass drum, and then I like to mic the beaters a lot. I like the instruments to have tone. I like to hear notes in that, and you can always get rid of that if you need to. Yeah. Like I said with snare drums, I usually like to use a couple mics on the top because I can balance them. Like if I need it a little bit brighter, but I don't want to EQ it.
Right.
So I'll use a little bit of the brighter mic, or I'm getting too much hi-hat bleed, so I'll use a little bit of the darker mic. You know, this is all really to me like real basic, rudimentary kind of ways of approaching it. Before I start plugging in a bunch of stuff, I just see if I can make it happen real simply like that.
So your dominant mic that you'd try to get the most out of would tend to be like a front of kit mic, kind of like further away from the kit looking in rather than like a mono overhead kind of thing?
It can be either one. Usually if it's gonna, I mean, it's very common for it to be just a microphone just sitting right there in front of the drum kit.
Some of my favorite guys, like Gabe Roth, I was asking about drum tones. He's like, just one kind of mic. And I'm like, that's how I was recording my 4-track when I was 12. I can do that again now? That's awesome.
Yeah, in a weird way, it's funny how that is. It's like you do all these things early on because you just had to.
Yeah.
And then you go down this rabbit hole of using a zillion microphones, and then you kind of, little by little, you realize, man, it can work just making the right decisions, you know, just one time. Bass drum, snare drum, so a lot of like the punchier kind of stuff I do, you got to multi-track those things. Those things have to be where you have the capacity to, you know, really drive the fader up and make it, you know, really pump. Outside of that, it can be, I'll mic the toms, I'll mic the cymbals, but I try to use as few mics as possible. If I can get away with just one microphone capturing those things, that's awesome. Yeah. But it's rare that you can do that. You usually have to supplement it, as I say. I like large diaphragm condensers on toms a lot because the way I always sort of look at it is you're going to get cymbal bleed.
Yeah.
That's just part of the way the drum sounds, so you might as well make the cymbal bleed sound good.
Right.
A lot of people have a tendency to use things like, you know, 421s on toms because there's more, you know, isolation and whatnot. But my kind of contrary opinion to that is, well, yeah, but the bleed you are getting is ugly.
Right.
So why not make the bleed be something that is remotely usable?
And especially if you're adding compression to those, all that rejection you got is going away and
exactly
coming up.
Exactly. Yeah. So what I kind of keep circling back to is just try to make it sound good with as little as possible. Because one thing, I mean, you know, this is engineering 101 essentially, but the more mics you use, the more phasing things you're going to have to think about. And phasing is maybe the most important thing when it comes to multi-tracking, making sure your phasing is right. I mean, if you've ever had tracks to mix and the drums mics are phasey, it'll take you forever trying to make that sound good. It's almost impossible to really make it sound right. A lot of times it just sounds better if you get rid of microphones and have more, phase correlation.
Dig it.
Yeah.
2 last questions on this whole idea of capturing tracks, recording. First of all, guitar. You've gotten some like amazingly weird, twisted, demented guitar sounds, particularly with St. Vincent, but not just there as well. But I hear you like a pretty minimal chain on the recording side. So that being said, what minimal chain do you usually like? And then what kind of tools do you like to try to chase some of these weirder sounds?
Well, I always just try to get it recorded in a way that's exciting. I like a lot of coloration. I love pedals, you know. I love getting the right chain of pedals. For guitars, I really like picking preamps that have a lot of character as is. I love Ampex 350s and 351s for guitars. Like those, if you want to know why my guitars sound the way they sound, that would be, go buy one of those.
Yeah, that plus taste.
Yeah. I mean, those, I can't even begin to tell you how good guitars sound to me through those.
Sure.
It's like the difference, it's like hearing guitar for the first time I used those on guitars. If your listeners don't know much about them, I'm talking about the Ampex preamps that used to be for tape machines. You can convert those to be preamps, and my God, what it does to guitars is so cool. So cool. I've got 3 of them and they're always on. Being used. I like Neve preamps a lot for guitars. I like it for the coloration. I like how I can push a preamp to color that sound. It's fun to like push a preamp and watch the guitar player react to that. So when you listen to like St. Vincent, first of all, she's an amazing guitar player. So there's that. Great player, great player, period.
Absolutely.
She just loves to have me destroy the sound. She just likes that. So when you listen to those records, you're listening to 2 people who are just having a lot of fun. And we're trying to make something that sounds cool to us. So the weirder I get, the weirder she'll get. And that's how you end up with these insane sounds on those records where it's like, how did that ever happen? It's just because we were trying to make ourselves chuckle. So coloration, lots of coloration. I love culture vultures on guitars. So that, I love just the way you can push those. And so it's a lot of coloration, not a lot of compression. Don't normally use a lot of compression on guitars except for maybe like room mics. Usually, I mean, if you're running a guitar through a bunch of pedals, it's already compressed. You know what I mean? Same thing with like a snare drum. I'll use and this is the most rudimentary way I can put it, I'll use a dark and a bright mic. And if I want it brighter, I push up the bright mic. If I want it darker, push it up.
I hear you.
And just avoid the EQ if I can,
Cool. And then the last question just around capturing stuff is there's a lot of really cool Moog synth sounds, particularly on this most recent record you got the Grammy for. I'm
sorry, did I get a Grammy? No.
Didn't you? I think you did.
No, I did. It's in my bathroom.
Really?
It really is.
In the toilet or above?
Okay.
I should have said that. I like the Grammys.
No. I don't mean that it's in my bathroom. It's like, the thing is you get it, and you're like, I'm superstitious in a lot of ways. I don't want to put it near, like, in the control room, because that's weird.
It is.
If you
put it in a mantle place at home, will it turn you into Phil Spector over
exactly.
time?
So it's like, I literally, like, tactically, I was like, let's put it in the bathroom. That's kind of a fun thing to see when you're in the bathroom, as opposed to when you're trying to make creative decisions and the artist is like looking at the Grammy.
Oh, goodness.
So no, nothing against Nares. I put it in the bathroom because it seems like the most playful place to have it.
Absolutely.
When somebody is, hopefully they're not thinking about music when they're in there. What was the question?
It was about synths. Oh yeah, so on this most recent record, on this most recent St. Vincent record, there's a lot of really cool Moog synth stuff. Do you think about the chain the same way you think about a guitar chain, where you're trying to saturate things, or does it more just come from the keyboard?
Again, on St. Vincent, the synth player, Bobby Sparks, First Call kind of synth player dude. Him and Mackenzie are kind of my band. They're my wrecking crew kind of dudes, because they take direction so well and they're incredible players. Here's where I'm going to geek out about gear for a second. The Mini Moog D is the Rolls Royce of all keyboards, of synthesizers to me, and I have one in the studio. It's on so many records I do. For that sort of like funkadelic, P-Funk, Parliament for that kind of sound, there's almost nothing better. And I love those records. And that's sort of where that's coming from, that sort of synth sound. And so it's really just about the Mini Moog Ds. It's not about the chain, really. And there's not a lot of coloration on that, That's just sort of like plug it in and go for it. A lot of those are just direct sounds,
Yeah. All right, last couple of questions on gear, I promise.
Yeah.
Number one is your own studio back in Texas. You're in Dallas, right? What kind of console do you have there? Why did you pick it? Why is it the thing for you?
I have Neve 53 series, and I totally love it. I mean, I love Neve to begin with. My favorite console was probably an 80 series. At the time, whenever I was trying to purchase a real, a good console, I couldn't afford that, and I didn't want to pay a tech to come every week to tech it out. So a good friend of mine, John Vanderslice, owns a studio called Tiny Telephone, and I worked on his 53 series, and I was like, this is an awesome console. And I always really liked the 53 series. There's so many different modules, but I always loved the way those modules sounded on guitar. Steve Albini turned me on to those. I just thought they always sounded great on guitar. So that is sort of like, how I got into it. I've never really ever been super attracted to super punchy fast consoles like APIs, Flickingers. I love the way they sound. As a matter of fact, the older I get, the more I like those consoles, but I kind of wanted something a little softer. Sure. I bought one, and another thing I really like about it is that you can always switch different. There's so many different modules you can use, and they all sound different. So I have. It's exactly the kind of console I like to have.
Sure.
It's very, very minimal.
Are there any other essential parts to your mixing system, whether it's outboard or maybe a master bus chain that you often use? Is any of that essential to what you do?
No. I have a lot of gear, and I never really ever use the same thing twice. I just sort of... There are things that work really well, but then I kind of get bored with it.
Right.
And then I'll try something else. I'm like, well, that's cool too.
Will you at least try to stick with like one mix bus compressor for an entire record, or you not even get held? I
don't ever compress the mix bus.
Oh, really?
Never do it.
Tell me about that. Did you try and it didn't work for you, or you just never felt the urge?
Well, I think that the whole like compressing the mix bus thing is a little bit of a fad. I mean, I know a lot of people do it and they just tap it and you never hear it and it's great. But right now it's a real fad to really crunch that crap, Yeah. And I'm not particularly excited about things I hear all the time.
Sure.
It's like auto-tune. It's like, how's that impressive now, you know? If I have a really dynamic mix, like a band like Explosions in the Sky, sometimes I'll limit the stereo bus just because the quiet parts are too quiet. But I only do it to solve a problem, and very rarely do I do it for sound. I have done it before, but it's rare. There are dudes that I know, like Dave Fridman, who is, that's his thing, and it sounds so great, and he just nails it, and I just feel like I could never do it as well as that anyway, so why even try? I just try to make it sound good to me at the time, and I've never really ever had a lot of success with that. There are certain pieces of gear that I use, I just seem like I'm always patching in. Like I love my GML compressors and EQs, the 8900 and the 8200. Like I use those almost all the time. There's a DBX compressor, a 263. That's a de-esser that I bought for $50, and I probably have gotten $10,000 out of use out of. It's just the absolute best thing I've ever heard to get hi-hats out of snare drums, So like, I really need that. Right. There's all kinds of stuff I use a lot, but those are things that come to mind that I just use all the time. Cool.
So I just want to ask about then, where do you look to get dynamic range control in the mix? Because the stuff that I hear you do, I mean, it sounds explosive, but also, well controlled. So if you're not relying on a mixed bus compressor, do you bus compress individual instruments? Is it more about fader rides for you? And where do you look for kind of dynamic control?
The older I get, or the longer I do this, the less I compress in mixing. I like parallel compression just as much as the next person, and I used to do a lot of that. I don't do it so much anymore. I feel like as I make more and more records, I strip away all the sort of tricks, the sort of like mixer tricks. I do less and less of it, and I just try to make it sound good by pushing the fader up and putting it in the right direction. And yeah, I do a lot of fader moves, and I do a lot of subtle things, like when you say things are explosive, like I love dynamics. To me, when it comes to pop music or rock music, the average listener listens to two things. They listen to the vocals and they listen to the dynamics. Those are the two things they listen to. So, whenever the moment when the drums really hit, it's not uncommon for me to goose to actually just turn it up.
Right.
So I do a lot of that. Those are always the things I'm going to do before I use compression. Compression, I use compression to solve problems and to give a character if I need it. I know a lot of people, it's like they even having pulled it up and they're like patching in their favorite compressor. This is my stereo bus compressor always for the drums. This is my this for that. How do you even know? I don't. How can you tell? It's like miking up. Another thing I see drum engineers do is they have all the microphones set up for the drums before the drummer showed up with the drum kit. How do you even know what the drums sound like? I don't understand that.
I just know this is going to be fast and I'm going to be done, and that we only have so much budget.
But that's so not fun.
I agree.
That's so not fun.
Well, the rent is higher here in New York than it is in Texas. I think that plays into it.
There you go. You know what? Nothing wrong with being blue collar and being pragmatic. There's a great engineer, a very like from the '80s engineer that taught me a lot and saved my life career-wise when I was struggling in the late '90s, named Tim Kimsey. He's a fantastic engineer, very '80s. I saw him once do an entire session with nothing but 57s. And it sounded great, actually, but boy, I would never do that. I'd be like, are you kidding?
I hear you.
But I learned something from that, like a microphone that I find completely unimpressive. He was able to make it sound great. It's like, you know what? It just doesn't. It's just not that important at the end of the day. It's fun for us to sort of, as geeks, kind of enjoy, and it's like wine tasting. You can sit there and talk about, oh, there's a hint of cranberry here. That's all that is. That's all that is to me. Is like that kind of thing.
Well, speaking about the really affordable stuff, is there any inexpensive gear that you've gotten that you find yourself using all the time, and you're like, just, oh wow?
I love inexpensive gear. Yeah. One thing that me and Dave Fridman have in common as friends, we've learned this about one another, is we will have a $10 MXR distortion pedal plugged into a chain, and the next chain is a Fairchild 660. Right. It's all good. It's all useful. I love cheap gear. Like I was mentioning, the DBX 263, I think is what it is. I love pedals. I will use a Boss compression pedal on the whole drum kit if it sounds right. You can get character in all kinds of ways. And
well, John, thanks so much for taking the time to talk today. This has been fantastic. Cool. It was everything I hoped it would be and more. You're really some great insights. We love having you.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks again to John Congleton for taking the time. Thanks to Sterling Sound for having us. Thanks to B&H for sponsoring this video interview series. If you want to see more great interviews like this one, go to SonicScoop.com, go to B&H.com, sign up to our newsletters, and you'll get more info whenever a new video in this series comes out. Thanks for hanging out with us. See you next time.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.